Live, but huh? No, Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Right Crowd. This is our third weekend, and I am so very excited to introduce three wonderful, amazing authors and friends of mine on their panel, Bites of Fright, to read all night. And I'm so very excited to get started. I see that we have a couple of people watching on Facebook and YouTube. If you are watching, feel free to say hi, drop a comment, ask a question. A lot of this will be largely panel-based. There are some pre-written questions that the authors will answer, but if you have a question, if you want to say hi, feel free to pop in, leave a comment. We want to make this as interactive and engaging as possible. So, to begin, if this is your first time watching The Right Crowd, welcome. Essentially, the Right Crowd is a virtual author expo taking place every single Saturday and every single Sunday in the month of October at 2 and 4 p.m. I am your host, Katelynn Rentería, and I'm so very excited to bring an array of authors from all sorts of different genres and all sorts of different topics. And today, it's all about frightening and spooks and all those nice, cool things. And we already have a comment from another author who's been on a previous panel, Jackie Smith. She says, hi, Jackie. And she says, Manuel, your hair.
And I just cut it too.
I love
it.
Nice. Very nice. So thank you for joining. Thank you for joining, Jackie. And we also have another comment coming in from Raul Martinez Jr., a friend here from the Rio Grande Valley.
Hey,
hi, Raul. Thank you for joining. And another dear friend, Margie Longoria, says hi.
Hi, Margie. Librarians rock.
So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to drop a comment, say hello, ask questions. But for right now, we are going to jump right on into it and begin with panelist introductions. If you all would just like to really quickly say hello, my name is, and the title of your book, and we can get into more in-depth introductions and book descriptions later. But we will begin with Mr. Manuel Ruiz.
Hi, I'm Manuel Ruiz. I'm up in Round Rock, Texas. My books are the Dead Club series and also the standalone Lobo, Coronado, and the Legacy of the Wolf.
Thank you. And Ian Sputnik, if you'd like to say hello and the title of your book.
Hi, I'm Ian Sputnik, and the title of my book is Food for Worms.
Thank you very much. And Miracle Austin.
Yes. Hi, I'm Miracle, and my book trilogy is Doll and also Boundless, my collection.
Thank you so very much. And we do have another few comments coming in. Margie Longoria says, love you all. We love you, Margie.
Oh,
thank you for your support. And Rosie Ruiz on YouTube says, hi. Hello.
Hi, Rosie.
Sounds familiar. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. So I see our Facebook and YouTube numbers climbing, which I'm very, very glad, because now that there's more people, you all are just in time to hear more in-depth descriptions and introductions about our lovely array of panelists here. So beginning with Manuel Ruiz, tell us a little bit about yourself, background information, personal, professional, as well as about your book series. Manuel?
Okay, sure. I'm Manuel Ruiz. I live in Round Rock, Texas, which is just a few miles north of Austin. And I am a techie geek. I work in IT. I'm a database administrator, which is kind of the opposite of a programmer, because the second question I get is usually, what's a DBA? What does that mean? I'm also a musician. I'm in a band with my brother. We're in an 80s band called Freeze Frame, and I play bass and sing, and we just have a great time. We're off because of the COVID, but we are hopefully going to start gigging again in 2021. Also, as an author, I've written 4 books that I've had published, the Dead Club series, and there are 3 books, trilogy. And I've got Lobo, Coronado, and the Legacy of the Wolf, which is a standalone, which I will make into a series eventually someday. I'm kind of doing YA now. My next series is going to be, these are all middle grade, but YA is what's going to be next. And I've got 3 books, one ready, one almost done, and one in first draft is done. So I'm hoping to get them all out by sometime next year.
Very, very, very nice. And I hope I don't spoil anything, but I'm just so crazy excited to introduce our next panelist. He'll tell you a little bit about himself and his background and his written work. But I'm so very excited because he is among the panelists as being an international author. And I'll let him say a little bit about that in a little bit. But Ian Sputnik, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, I'm Ian Sputnik. I'm from the southeast of England. Worked up until recently in London. Due to relocation, I'm actually in between jobs at the moment, which is a good time to be off.
Yeah.
I only started working around the writing game, should we call it, 6 years ago. So I'm pretty much a late starter. I was mid-40s. Did a lot of writing at school, in college. Work and life just got in the way. I picked up my computer one day, wrote a story. It was picked up by an independent magazine. They picked up a few more. Another magazine picked up a few more. After a while, with a lot of support from lovely people like Miracle, I decided to put them together to bring out a collection, which I called Food for Worms, which is a mixture of short stories, dark verse, flash fiction, quite a bit of death, but quite a bit of comedy as well, dark humour. I've been told I've got quite a dark, humorous bent, and I think it comes out in my work. This was released at the beginning of the year, independent release through Amazon, and there you have it.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining. And we can conclude the panelist introductions. Yes, of course. I'm so very glad that you could join. And we can conclude our panelist introductions with Miss Miracle Austin.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. Excited about this panel very much. My name is Miracle Austin, and I live in Waco, Texas. That's between Austin and Dallas, just FYI, for people who aren't aware. I work by day as a medical social worker at a rehab long-term care facility focused with dementia and Alzheimer's residents. At nighttime and weekends, when I'm not procrastinating, I do write. And I do enjoy writing free verse poems with many stories intertwined, and also short stories and novels. My collection here is the Doll trilogy. Let me show you that here. And also Boundless. It's a collection. A little bit of everything, a gumbo of genres. And I'm a piggyback on with Ian. I'm a late bloom author myself. I started writing, really getting serious about it a few years ago. And I'll talk more about that because Katelynn has some specific questions. So I'll talk more a little bit later. And I'm so happy for all those who have joined us and who will continue to join us at this time.
Thank you so very much. And we do have a couple of comments coming in. Jackie Smith says, Miracle, I love your Halloween decorations at the back.
Thank you, Jackie.
I love them. And David Leja, who's another local author here from the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, says, Miracle. So hello. And see, before I even begin the Q&A session, we already have audience questions coming in, which is really awesome. Coming from Jackie Smith saying, Miracle, why won't you go ghost hunting with me?
Oh my gosh, Jackie, she knows the answer to this. Okay, listen. I love horror, suspense, supernatural. I fell in love with it a long time ago. In fact, my mom introduced it to me. There was this radio station that came on at AM. Now they're podcasts, but it was an AM radio station. And they would basically tell spooky, creepy stories. And I'm sure it was probably 8, 9, 10, something around that area. And so, you know, I just fell in love with it. I just loved everything about it. You know, things that make me jump and make me think and make me look under the bed, close the closet door, you know, shut the window. And 80s, 70s and 80s scary movies and cartoons kind of just fueled that love even more. And so I love watching it, listening to it, reading it. But as far, going back to Jackie's question, as far as like going and doing anything like that, participating a haunted adventure, no, that freaks me out so much. It's really kind of an oxymoron, you know, if you think about it, but no, I don't like participating in it. I'll listen to it all day, but as far as doing it, no. And I love listening to Jackie's stories. She has the best stories and she knows it. But as far as doing it, just wouldn't do it. So thank you, Jackie. Great question.
I know exactly how you feel. There's, a lot of my family members love watching scary movies. They love getting into it, blah, blah. But when it comes to actually going out, no, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
But we can begin with the panelist questions. And again, people on Facebook and YouTube, thank you so very much for watching. And if you have a question, a comment, you want to say hi, feel free to comment and I can bring them up and our panelists can respond, say hi, answer your questions. We want to keep this as fun and interactive as possible. So my first question for the panelists, which is exciting because we have all sorts of an array here, is where are you tuning in from? So a real quick shout out of where you're tuning in from, beginning with Manuel.
I'm in Round Rock, Texas, just a little north of Austin, home to Round Rock Donuts and Dell Computers.
Very nice. And Mr. Sputnik, where are you tuning in from?
I'm from Raynham, Kent, in Great Britain.
Very nice. Thank you. And I know it's about 10 o'clock at night over there. So I thank you so very much for coming and taking time. I thank you. And Miss Miracle, where are you tuning in from?
Katelynn, I answered that question already, and I did this last time when we did our other panel. I pre-answered a question. I'm so sorry. But I'm from Waco, Texas. I'm sure people are very familiar with Waco, different ways. Of course, Baylor University, Dr. Pepper Museum. Gosh, what else is in Waco? There's other things, but I'll leave it there.
But see, that's the great thing about a live panel is that even if you pre-answer a question, someone might have hopped in late, so you get to answer it for that. So, yes. And I myself am hosting and tuning in from Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. So I'm just right 40 minutes away from Mexico. So that's where I'm stationed. But my first question for you all would be, what made you sit down and write those first words of your book? Did you know that you were going to write the story? It's exactly what you set out to do. You had the idea and you said, let's go. Or did it kind of manifest and it took time? And before you knew it, you thought, hey, manuscript, I can turn this into something. So what made you write those first words of your book, starting with Mr. Ruiz?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about two books because they're the one they both have their own unique story. The first one was The Dead Club. The Dead Club, I actually was at a writing conference in San Antonio, and I went to, they had an icebreaker at the beginning of one of the pieces. You know how you just have an old icebreaker that you'd have in a classroom, hey, for the first 5 minutes, do this. Well, their icebreaker was write a hook, a 1 or 2 sentence thing that somebody would read, and you'd hope that it'd be interesting enough for them to write more. So I came out with that little things, and a young boy dies, and he wakes up in the afterlife and finds out that the underworld's broken, and he and 4 other kids have to figure out why, and it's their goal to figure out why. Okay, as I was done, finished the whole thing for the weekend, and it just kept bugging me when I got home. And for the next week, I realized, okay, this is a bigger story than I thought it was going to be. And bam, there it was. And so that became The Dead Club and turned out into a 3-book series. Lobo is a little different. My son was younger. He was I don't know, maybe he was in elementary school, maybe even before he started school. And I asked him, I was sitting there and struggling. And I said, you know what? I want to write and I want to just come up with a unique character. So I asked him, what type of character do you think I should write, son? And he says, Harry Potter and Batman, because he knows I'm a Batman freak. And so I was like, well, okay. So I took magical elements of Harry Potter, and then I took the fact that Bruce Wayne doesn't have superpowers. He can fight, he's super intelligent, and he's the world's greatest detective, Wayne Enterprises. And so anyway, I took those, meshed those, and that's how that became Lobo. And that it was Lobo kind of this background story about his father and everything, but that's what inspired that. So that came from a character. The first one came from a writing exercise, and I have other books that I've written that came from a dream, that came from an idea, that came from a scene that happens 75% into the story. So, but that's how those two first started.
Very nice. Thank you. And I think that's a good testament, that ideas can come from anywhere and you never know what's going to spark. You never know what's going to manifest, but it's always have the open mind to just run with it. You never know where it's going to take you. Yeah. And so, Mr. Sputnik, how did you begin with your title, Food for Worms?
Food for Worms, actually, the title from the book came from a friend's Twitter account. When he told me his account name, I thought that was such a cool name. But that was obviously way after I'd started writing. I was just writing short stories, which the first one I wrote was basically 3 o'clock in the morning. We'd just come back off holiday. I'd had a couple of days still before I had to go back to work. I couldn't sleep. I was sitting in my garden, looked up the garden, how dark it was. I think a fox or a hedgehog had gone past, which spooked me because I'm a coward at heart. And I just had a story wrapped around in my head. It just suddenly completely nothing to do with a tortoise or a hedgehog. So I went up on my PC, I tapped it out. I spent all night going through it. It was only short, a couple of 1,000 words. My wife read it in the morning. I said, I've written something. And she said, where did that come from? And I said, I'm just playing with it. She said, are you going to submit it somewhere? I'd never even thought to submit a story anywhere. So I did. Someone picked it up. Then I wrote another one. The same publication picked that up again. Then another one. Then I went to another publication just to see in case it wasn't a fluke. They picked those up. And a few years down the line, I had enough for a little collection. I've got some very good mates in the writing circle who sort of pushed me to actually bring out my own collection. I didn't think I had enough material, but seeing the size of novellas and that coming out, I did a word count. I put it together. I got an artist to do the cover. A very good friend of mine, Lee Foreman, who I know you know, Miracle, from New York. He gave it an edit for me, polished it up, and I've never looked back. And now I've got the bug, and I want more.
Very nice, very nice. And before we move on to Miracle's answer, I did have a comment coming in from Patricia Rentería saying, Ian, I read your story, held to account. It was awesome. What time is it right now where you live?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, it's 20 past 10.
Very nice. Very nice. And again, thank you for tuning in. But yes, she had said that she read your story, held to account, and it was awesome.
Yes.
Oh, that's really...
And again, see, and this is wonderful, a wonderful segue to Miracle's answer to the question, because Rosario Ozuna, a librarian from Gruya, Texas, here in Texas, says, wonderful guest. Hello, Miracle. So, Miracle, what got you to begin writing all of your different titles and your stories?
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start off. It's a two-part answer. Okay. I've always enjoyed writing, especially, assignments for, high school, college, grad school, but I never ever thought I would become an author. That was never in my head. Social worker, that was kind of what I did. I didn't think about anything that I would become later. However, a few years back, I found myself in a very, very, very extremely dark place. And by the grace of God, I stumbled on this online writing community, and they had writing prompts. And so I started remembering back, in high school and college, I enjoyed writing, short little tidbits, stories. So I started doing that. And one day, a writer, she said, hey, why don't you start submitting some of your information, get it out there, some of your works. And so I was like, oh, I didn't think much of it. But then she kept kind of pushing it. So I did. I started submitting to different online e-zines and things of that nature, anthologies. I received lots of rejections. And I almost gave up until it was probably a few months after I started submissions. And I received this acceptance email from my very first mini short story, Pins, which was submitted. I think it was on Valentine's Day back in 2013. Leaves of Ink. And then a little bit later on down the road, Sanitarium published my first short story, Last Pass. So then I kind of got the bug and kept wanting to write more. And before I knew it, Boundless was born. But I didn't really know what to do with it. So I said, okay, what do I do now? So I started research, and I probably looked up over 300 publishers in the U.S., outside the U.S., agents, submitted all, and I got like over 96% rejections. And I was like, okay, nobody likes it. 4 potentials, 3 of them fizzled out. And then one, believe it or not, local Dallas publisher said, hey, it's a little small publishing company. And she said she was really interested in it. And so she sent me the contract. I signed it. I was like, oh, it's finally happening. And then a few months went by, didn't really hear anything. I'm like, oh, okay. In the meantime, I went to a Houston authors conference, met some really nice authors, and they were telling me about something I never thought about, self-publishing. So I took that in, and then I waited a few weeks, and then I emailed the publisher, and I was just kind of asking, like, hey, what's going on? Haven't heard anything. Just wanted to check the status. And she responded maybe back a day or two and said, oh, it's coming. Just give me some more time. So I said, okay. So while I was waiting, I started writing a short story, which is going to be 5,000 words, maybe 10 max. And it was basically a story about 3 adults who worked for this really abusive, cruel car salesman. And they decided that they were going to get revenge on him. And then I thought about a comment that one of the potential publishers made to me. And he said in an email, he wrote, that I really think your audience is more YA and NA. So I ripped up that idea and made that story a young adult, and 5,000 words turned into 10, 10 turned into 20. Boom, Doll was born. So I was waiting to hear back from my publisher about Boundless. And so finally, after all that time, she reverted all of my rights back because there were some personal issues going on in her world, and she had to close the publishing company. So I got my rights back. I was really sad because I was like, no one wanted it. What am I going to do? I almost deleted the whole file. And my husband, Sean's like, no, don't do that. Do something with it. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this one first, Doll. And then I will publish Boundless, self-publish, both of them, later. So that's how that all came about.
Very nice. Thank you. And I do have a few comments coming in from YouTube. I believe this was from a previous watcher from a previous panel. Genesis Martinez Hernandez says hi. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. And pardon my pronunciation. Marcia Joseph says hi, Ian.
Hi, Marcia.
So hello. So thank you for tuning in. And again, anyone on Facebook or YouTube, if you'd like to drop a comment, ask a question, we are making this as interactive as possible. Say hello, give a couple comments. I know Jackie Smith just said Mr. Miracle to save the day about getting Boundless published. So yes, absolutely. So anyone to say hi, drop a comment, ask a question. And we have another comment coming in from another local author here from the RGV, Patty Ork-Raymond, saying, love the story behind the publishing of Doll. Hi, Miracle. Hi, Patty. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. So my next question to you all would be, who or what were some inspirations for your writing career? Were there certain author figures, personal figures in your life, people, events, other stories? What were some inspirations that you drew from for writing and maybe even publishing, beginning with Manuel?
I started reading Stephen King way too young. I had older cousins that took me to the drive-in to see all these scary movies, so I was like, awesome, again, way too young. But Stephen King and Anne Rice were the two biggest ones I read when it comes to horror and supernatural. Neil Gaiman was later, but I love his writing, his style. But a big thing too with my writing is when I was younger, and to this day, the only book I've read probably 4 times plus is To Kill a Mockingbird. And the aspect of that, and you'll find it in a lot of my books, and I didn't realize this till one of my beta readers pointed it out. I have a big sense of family and right and wrong, and that drives most stories. But it's about the right and wrong, and treating people like family and treating them the way you wanted to be treated. It's like step in their shoes and walk around. The kind of the speech Atticus tells Scout. But a big thing is that a lot of my characters end up, just like Disney movies. Let's kill mom and dad right off the bat before the movie starts. So let's wait a few minutes to like break your heart later, Simba. So little things like that. It's like they have to destroy before they pick it up. So a lot of my kids are coming in, and a lot of my characters don't have their family, their actual blood family around. So they form a family with other people that they meet and take this journey and this big sacrifice and just this big adventure that they're taking together, and it brings them together. And in the end, hopefully, for those that survive, their family, so that's a big aspect of my inspiration and kind of what drives me to write. And I notice is a major theme in most of my stories.
I love it. Thank you. And Mr. Ian Sputnik, who or what were some inspirations for your writing and your authorship?
I've always been drawn to short stories. I love short stories. I love the idea that you can get on a train or a bus, pick up a book out of your bag, read one story completely, and not have to go back halfway through and find out where you were. I think the biggest inspiration when I was younger, Clive Barker's Books of Blood. I absolutely love them. I just love how wacky they were, how he'd just take a normal situation and just throw something, hands leaving a body and walking away and rebelling against the human who they belong to. I just absolutely love that. But what I think really kept me going after the first couple, which I just thought I'd written a couple of stories. I never thought I'd ever have enough for a book. It never crossed my mind that would happen. It's the people I met through Facebook, through the sanitarium, faculty, slush piling group, who are just so supportive. You can bounce ideas off of them. When you say, I haven't got enough for a book, yes, you have. Or I don't know if I can bring it out. Yes, you can. So I think to begin with, Clive Barker, definitely. Out of a novel, it would be Misery. I absolutely love Misery. It's the first big book I ever read. It made me feel physically sick reading it. It was described so well. Yeah, and I love the idea it's horror, but just no monsters. You don't have to have a monster for it to be horror. I love the whole idea of that. I know they toned it down a hell of a lot for the film, completely toned down from the book.
Yeah.
But then, as we know, the book is always better than the film.
Yes.
So when my film comes out, remember that. But I'd actually say, yeah, Clive Barker to begin with, but just all the people in the writing circle who I now know are my greatest inspiration. That's why I always buy their books. I'd rather buy a book from someone I know now. I've got a special shelf. It's only got people on it who I know.
Oh, very nice. I love that. And I'm going to quote you for that and like be using it. Like, there doesn't have to be a monster for it to be horror. I love that. I really, really love that.
Yes.
And before we continue with Miracle's answer, Patty York Raymond says, ooh, you guys scare me with your frightening stories.
Good. That's the point.
That's the goal. That's the goal. We're accomplishing it. I'm glad. I'm excited. So, Miracle, who or what were some of your inspirations for your writing and author career?
Okay. Well, I tell you what, my mom, she grew up in a small country town, Crawford, Texas, and she told me a lot of stories, a lot of creepy stories that either happened to her or some of her buddies when they were in middle school, high school. So I've kind of taken those stories and I plan to use them eventually. I've used some, but she has been a big inspiration. No surprise here, Stephen King, huge. Carrie's probably made the biggest impact with me, just because knowing a young teen girl who had no confidence about herself at all, and then she was just bullied and tortured by mean girls. And mean girls will always exist. I don't care how old you are or where you are in life, they will always exist, whether it's in junior high, high school, college, etc., and sometimes in the workplace as well. But that's one reason why her story stuck with me, because I was bullied in junior high, high school, and college. So I think that's why I made a connection with her. And also her story helped me write Doll as well. And some other authors that totally moved me. Gwendolyn Brooks Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, E.B. White, and of course, 80s music and 80s movies. So.
It's very nice. Thank you. And I do have a comment from Jackie Smith referring back to something Ian had said, where she said, I have one of those shelves too. All my friends' books. Wonderful. Wonderful. And so again, to anyone watching on Facebook and YouTube, go ahead and drop a comment, say hi, ask a question. We're making this as interactive as possible. And my next question for the panelists would be, how has our current world situation impacted your writing career? Either in a positive light or, you know, a little bit stuttering. I know it would be amazing, right, to say like, oh, this is the most productive I've ever been in my entire life. But it doesn't always go that way. So have you been focusing on other aspects like marketing or more writing or other projects? How has our current world situation impacted your writing career, beginning with Mr. Ruiz?
Writing wise, I tend to write at night. But during the day when I was at work physically in the office, I would take time during my lunch hour. I'd go and I'd eat real fast and I'd spend 30, 45 minutes writing. I don't do that anymore because I'm at home. I guess that separation kind of just, I don't have the inner clock to say, oh, I got to go to lunch. Let me take my break and do something for me. But now I don't. I'm working straight through it. But I do National Novel Writing Month. That's every November. You know, try and write a 50,000 word novel in the month of November. I've been doing that for the last few years. And so that measures, if you put it, you can put in the times you write. And I found out I primarily write between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. So I'm definitely a night owl, but that's where the majority of my writing happens, at home, at different places. And if I get burned out at home, I will, before all this, I would go places also and I'd write there. I'd go, you know, to Barnes and Noble or to Whataburger, whatever. Whataburger is a really awesome place, Ian, by the way. I know you may not know that in England, but Whataburger.
Yeah, Ian, it is.
And so I would go to places like that and go write, but I can't do that now. So I just started doing different locations in my house. I go to my backyard if it's not, you know, 110 degree Texas heat, and I'll write in the backyard. So my writing isn't, it's the same. The only thing that really affected during the daytime. I've been more productive when I actually do write, but I found that my daytime writing is not happening as much. If I do it, it's during the weekend when I'm not working.
Very nice. And I like that you...
A little more marketing. So, fine.
Oh, yes. No, you're good. You're good. Very good. And I just love that you mentioned like Whataburger. I think if that's like a recurring, like where are the Texans? Whataburger. We're just like, I love it. I love it. And see, there we go. We have a couple of comments coming in from Ms. Patty York Raymond saying, Manuel, I'm a night owl too. That has been my most productive time to write.
Yes,
myself as well. And Jackie Smith says Katelynn is a proud member of the Whataburger fandom. Yes. So yes. And so Mr. Ian Sputnik, how has our current world situation impacted your own writing career and other things in that realm?
Well, I knew I was going to take this year off anyway. This was before it really hit. I had great plans for when I bought my book out. Maybe I'll go to a few shows, maybe if I can promote it. Unfortunately, pretty much after the book came out, England shut down. So that was out the window. It hasn't really affected me in the way I interact with anyone else because I'm so used to doing everything over the internet anyway. I have friends in Australia, Canada, America, very few writing friends in Britain. So it's always been par for the course for me. Everything's done by text or video. I had great plans to write a second book this year. If I'm taking a year off, of course I can get a book out in a year. With everything happening, my inspiration just went. I couldn't write tar. It just seems strange to sit and try to write something when you usually used to go into a mundane world and a mundane job and coming home and writing something fantasy. But then suddenly when on your TV, you've got people dying in their thousands. The book just seems wasn't going to happen. I've started writing again now, a few short stories, a few bits of flash fiction. Had a couple published very recently. Held to Account was a very recent one online from a photo prompt, which is the first time I've ever done in one of those. I don't know if you've done them before. So what I've basically been doing is throwing myself into Sanitarium, the publication where both me and Miracle were both published in, which I now own. We've got a huge backlog of books. all in PDF formats. So I've got to take each one of them, put it onto Word, reformat it, make a few changes, upload it. So luckily that's kept me very busy, and hopefully, touch wood, the writing's starting to come back again now. So within the last, I think, month, I've done 3, although only flash to short fiction, of 3 new pieces. 2 of them have been picked up already. So I'm touching wood for it's a sign of things to come. Play it by ear.
Very nice. I love that you're delving into other projects as well, like getting the productivity going and putting that effort and energy into other things as well.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
It's nice for, even if you're not writing, if you're still doing something within the genre, even if it is pre-publishing someone else's work, you still feel like you're doing what you love.
Very much so. I love that. I love that. And for Miracle Austin, how has our current world situation impacted your own writing and authorship?
Oh, tremendously, Katelynn. I've definitely had the COVID-19 depression blues, and there's been so much trauma, you know, not just with COVID-19 in our world, but so many other things going on in our world. But as far as speaking of COVID-19, you know, I work in the medical community, so, you know, I see a lot, I hear a lot. Dealing with, you know, our precious elderly residents, you know, dying from COVID-19. It seems like every day I go into work, you know, there's a new positive or multiple positive cases in our building. So that just kind of puts a huge downer on you on many different levels, emotionally, psychologically. So my writing has suffered. I have not been inspired to write or concentrate on my big writing projects, but I have been able to do little pieces of writing, whether it's a short story or a free verse or a little novelette. I've been able to do those things, and I have a little piece coming out soon. And I think, Ian, you're in that Sirens Call, the Halloween publication.
Oh, you're in Halloween? Yes, I am.
So that'll be coming out, just a little something. I don't even think it's a good minute, but anyhow, so I've been able to do that. And so, but I will tell you, these virtual events that you've been doing, Katelynn, have really inspired me. And they keep me distracted. So it's nice. And also reading, that helps a lot. And I do, when Manuel was talking about how when he was in the office, the physical office, he would read, you know, during lunchtime. So I do find myself doing that more. I have my lunch book that I read, and then I have my night book that I read. So I do 2 different books, so that helps me. So yes, but these types of events are very helpful. You have no idea. So I just want to thank you for doing these, and I appreciate it so very much. And I know other authors do as well, and also readers and listeners and artists. So there you go.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it. And honestly, I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you for, you know, everything that you do in the medical field, all of the medical professionals, healthcare professionals, first responders. You all are really out there giving it your all, and you see, you know, much more than the rest of us do. And if it affects us, I can only imagine how, you know, the people who are right there dealing with it feel. And very much thank you for everything that you do. And if this is even just a little bit that I can do to help and promote, because, you know, it's been so long since we've been able to see each other. I haven't seen yourself or Manuel in over a year. Ian, this is the very first time I'm seeing you, and probably virtually is maybe one of the only ways we'd be able to connect and interact. And so even if there could be just, you know, an hour or so where we can talk and promote and laugh and celebrate and connect with the audience as well, I'm more than happy to be able to serve in that capacity. So thank you all for joining, and thank you for taking the time. But I think my next question would be, what is the easiest and or most difficult part of writing and being an author? But very quickly, I see comments coming in. So before we get to that, I see Mr. Anthony Miranda on Facebook referring back to something Manuel said, saying, I missed that, just to get out real quick, sit, write, around people, and Whataburger. Whataburger continues to make its show. And they also say, yes, way to go, Harlingen, RGV in the house. Yes, I am here. Represent. I got you guys. So moving on to the next question. With that, what is the easiest and or most difficult part about writing or authorship? Either this could be the actual writing, or it could be publication or marketing, or, you know, finding a publisher, getting the motivation to write. What is the most, you know, the easiest or the most difficult aspect of that? Beginning with Manuel.
I follow philosophy in your writing. Your first draft should be get it down. Don't try and make it perfect as you go, because you'll never finish it. I live by the mantra, you can't fix what doesn't exist, which is what your second draft and more are for. And so I love writing the first draft because it took me a long time to get over it because I used to write by hand, and it was, and anyway, start going, and I don't care. Like, I don't care that I have a typo. I don't care about this. I'll fix it later. But I like the aspect of sitting there, and I do word sprints. I only started doing word sprints about 3 years ago. And a word sprint is when you sit and you give yourself a time. You figure out what works for you, and you already have an idea of the scene you're about to write. That's the only thing you need to know. And you say, for the next 10, 20, 30, whatever number works for you, set a timer, and I just type. And I don't care. Again, I don't care what I'm typing in the sense of my grammar or anything like that. I can clean that later, but I want to get it done. And I'm racing against this clock. And it's an adrenaline boost. And you're just like excited, like, ooh. And then you think that when I used to write slower and not do sprints, I used to think, I don't think sprints are ever going to work for me. Sometimes I come up with an idea in the middle of the night, 3 weeks in, and I'm not going to get that. But the thing is, if you do it the right way, or whatever's right for you, I'm sorry, I don't want to say that there's a right way because everybody's different. I have music in the background. My 80s on 8 on Sirius, 80s music, heck yeah. And I put headphones on. I have it low enough to where I can hear it, but not distract me. And I know what I'm about to write, and I just go. So that's my favorite part. I'm writing, I'm creating, and I'm not thinking. And then I may be halfway through it, and then I get an idea, and I just go with it. And then that 20 minutes, bing, it's done. And if I still have more to go, then I reset it and go another 20 minutes. 20 minutes was it turned out to be my best time. 30 is too long, and 15 was too short. So 20 minutes is my perfect spot. And what is the most difficult for me is marketing and getting a synopsis down. The synopsis, sometimes it's 1 page, a paragraph, getting the hook. Usually I've gotten to a point now where I kind of get that as I'm going. The way I structure things now, I can pull them out a little easier, but it's still difficult. It's funny, the shorter it is, the more difficult it is for me. A 1 page synopsis isn't so tough. The paragraph or the query, or especially the 1 or 2 line hook, it's like, you just want to make it perfect. And I stress more about that than writing the first draft. And so that's my answer.
Very nice, thank you. And you're not the only one. I've always struggled with trying to stay within like limits. Like academic writing is always a struggle for me because like, oh, make this 2 pages, and I'm like, I have 6, so like I don't know how to. But you're not the only one that's struggling keeping within keeping it short and sweet. And it's like, but there's so much to say and there's so much to talk about. But Ian Sputnik, what do you think is the easiest and or most difficult part about writing or authorship?
Easiest, I'd say, if it's a short story and I've already got a good idea in my head exactly where I want it to go. I tend to work backwards anyway. I have an ending, but if I've got a beginning already, the first draft, and I don't stop for typos. Sometimes I go back and can't really work out what I've written, but I just can't stop. If I stop once I get the voice in my head, and right, that's where it's going, I'm narrating it to myself. If I stop once, it's gone. If I can't finish a draft of a short story in one go, I find it's very difficult for me to go back and finish it. You can almost see the join where I've gone back. I'm in a different frame of mind. I've lost the threads. I've lost memento. That to me is when I'm really on a roll. My fingers are going 10 to the dozen. My wife's throwing water on my hands because they're steaming. The hardest, because I've never had to put my work to a publisher. For independent publishers, it's fine if you send a story, but for a whole book, I've self-published, so I haven't had to go through that trying to plug my book to a publisher. Hypnosis on the back. No, that's a no for me. I literally a couple of lines and that'll be it. There's no way I could write one for the back of my book, so I filled the back of my book up with blurbs from people I sent the book to in the writing community. Miracle, you're on it. Just let them, because basically if you read through the blurbs, it says exactly what I wanted to say, but only better. ultimate worst is writing a bio. When someone said, write a bio about yourself. Because when I read it, I think that sounds so big-headed. And people say, well, that's what you've got to do. You've got to promote yourself. You've got to push yourself. And I cringe when I read it. Luckily, someone looked at my bio a year or so ago, neatened it up for me, and now I can just edit that as things change. But that's my worst. My pain and my devil in my head is getting rid of typos. When you've checked your piece 100 times and 100 more, and then you send it off, and then you find, oh look, it still had typos in it. I just think it's virtually impossible to proofread your own work, because when I'm reading it, I know what it's meant to say. So regardless of what's on the paper, if I put 2 A's in the row, that's fine. My mind has completely ignored the 2 A's. I know what it's meant to say. So that's why I always get someone else to have a look. And I'm always surprised about the amount of typos they find, even in a 2 or 3 page draft. They'll come back with 5 or 6 blatant typos that I've missed. So that is my real bugbear: typos and proofreading.
I love that you mentioned and brought that up, because I know it's actually like a scientific and psychological just fact that when you read, you exactly as you said, your brain sees what it thinks is there. And I know a lot of writers, I know myself in the beginning, I was afraid to show my work to other people, even for proofreading, because that's something you put time and effort, and what if they don't like it, blah, blah. But you gotta get over and be like, look, help, and look for the typos, give the feedback. It's absolutely important.
Have you ever seen the posts on Facebook where they can write out a whole paragraph and they miss out virtually all the vowels, and the human mind can read it? You just fill it in, and especially the quicker you read it, you don't even spot the letters missing. Your mind just fills in the blanks, and that's the problem with typos.
And I think that's why proofreading is just 100%. I know I'll be asking another question about advice later, but that's always one that I tend to not touch on, or for whatever reason forget. But it's an absolutely imperative one that constructive criticism is very much something not to be afraid of. With the right group of people, be able to give and ask for the advice back, and as well as proofreading, even if it's just for misspellings or typos, it's absolutely really important. And so, Miss Miracle, what do you think the easiest or most difficult aspect of writing or your authorship is?
Okay, easiest are the multiple ideas that just come flying in. Oh, that's wonderful. The hardest for me are life barriers, whatever that may be, anything minor, anything major. So that's most difficult, and that really halts my writing when I run into one of those, or multiple ones sometimes. So yes. Those are mine.
Very nice. And so my next question is going to be a little bit more on the personal side. But before we jump in, a reminder to everyone watching on Facebook and YouTube, say hi, drop a comment, ask a question. I do have a couple more questions lined up. And then if you all are receptive and open up to it, maybe we could have a couple minutes per author reading an excerpt from your stories. Manuel, I'll have you read that synopsis. I'm kidding. But if you can, read a bit of it and give us a little taste of your work, and hopefully get us with some chills and some spooks. But before we do that, we'll finish up with some questions. And I say finish up, but I still have quite a few lined up. But more on the personal side is, do you have any hobbies besides writing, either pre-pandemic or during the pandemic? I don't know, maybe you learned a new skill of knowing how to crochet or knit or sew or clay or whittle. I don't know. Have you picked up any new hobbies, or what are things you like to do outside of writing, beginning with Manuel?
I'm a big reader, as most writers are, I would hope. So I read a lot, and I read different genres. I read all different kinds of stuff. And that's what I rarely does a day go by that I don't read at least for 15 minutes, even if I'm exhausted. So reading's a big thing. Musician. I grew up a musician, rhythm section. My brother, he's a drummer. I'm a bass player, and he continued playing for years. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, we're going on 4 years, I think, he said, hey, I've got an idea for an 80s band. Let's do something. And we started playing, thinking, okay, we'll gig here and there. And it ended up, we gig a lot. And so we've already had to turn a lot of gigs for the pandemic, but really enjoying it. It's the music I grew up with. It's the music I love. And we play anything from new wave up to rock and roll. We play Metallica, we play Erasure, we play groups that I would like, and some of these groups I did not like when I was growing up. But as I got older, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. It's not bad. So we have a good time doing that. And my main vice is I'm a gamer. I don't have as much time to game. I'm a PlayStation guy. So sorry, Xbox folks, no offense, but I'm a PlayStation guy. I have my Nintendo Switch, and so I try to play. I play more I don't play a lot of online. I play more the Uncharted, the Gods of War, Kingdom Hearts, those kind of games, and more the single player. And that's primarily what I do in my free time. I buy way too many toys. I still buy way too many toys.
I know your mug. I know your mug is also Batman. Like I've seen you taking to it, and I'm like, yes, DC love, absolutely love DC Comics. Batman's one of my all-time favorites. But Ian Sputnik, what are some hobbies that you like to do and partake in outside of writing?
Most of it, I'd like to say, probably watching films. I've always loved films. I think it was one of the things that got me into enjoying horror is when video recorders first came out and you could actually get your hands on these ropey 1978 sort of horror films. My first film I remember watching on a video was Zombie Flesh Eaters. Also, I think called Zombie or sometimes Zombie 2. I still think the music for that is the best piece of music ever written. You're frightened before it starts just because of the music. But if I'm watching films, or if I watch any genre of film, as long as it's a good film, my favourite is finding a low-budget, decently made horror film. Independent studio, no big studios telling them exactly how it's got to end, no happy ending, no silly hanging on ending where there's going to be an egg of a monster in the corner so there's going to be a sequel. Which is why I prefer something like the Horror Channel over to the Sky channels, because you do get some real gems on there. I don't think you need a budget to make a horror film. I think some of the best horror films ever made, if you go back to the 70s, the Hammer House films, they were frightening. Nothing was happening. Yeah. Creepy music, the creaky door, nothing's happening, and you're absolutely petrified. And I think that CGI took a lot of that away. There are still some good streamlined horror films which use CGI, but I think they're a bit too reliant on them, and they've taken away the suspense. So that'd be that's my favorite.
Very nice. And Miracle Austin, any hobbies that you like, or outside of authorship and writing?
Well, definitely reading. Before the pandemic hit, I used to love going to the theater and concerts and local events, around town and, different little areas around. But now, as far as what I do, I find myself kind of like looking through. I have a small comic book collection, so I'll look through some of those. And I used to collect stamps. I started when I was in the second grade, so I have a few books of stamps that I'll just kind of, look through and peruse through and just kind of reminisce. And so that kind of keeps me busy. I haven't picked up anything new. No, not at this time. That could change. But that's about it. Of course, I dive into Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. I find myself doing a lot of that more and marathoning series when I should really be writing. But it kind of just keeps me, it helps with my sanity. So it's nice. It's a nice, I just got to find a balance, and I will. It takes a little time.
Very nice. And I do have an audience question coming in from M. Anthony Miranda on Facebook saying The Cure. Yes? No?
Yes. Just like Heaven, we play The Cure. That was a group that I did not like in high school. I didn't like their image. I wasn't into it. I was a rocker. I grew up with Journey and Kiss and Ultraman. And as I got older and I started hearing acoustic versions, I was like, okay, Robert Smith's a really good songwriter. And we do Just Like Heaven. That's one of our most popular songs. We have a few others we're working on, but that's definitely something we play. And my friends in high school would freak out when they'd see me really loud singing Just Like Heaven in the backgrounds. And I love the song. It's a great song. Great bass line too.
Very nice.
I hated The Cure growing up. I absolutely detested them. And I don't know if it's an age thing, but suddenly I love them.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's a thing because growing up, you pick different genres. I was into The Police, The Jam. Yeah. And then if you were into that, and being the Jam, I was a mod, so we followed all the mod revival
Mm-hmm.
And then the old stuff, the Who, the Kinks. So if you listen to one, you weren't allowed to listen to another. So you hated it because you were told to. But now I listen to some of the Cure songs, and they are amazing.
Yes.
Which is great, because when you're older, you don't get the peer pressure of what you should listen to or what you shouldn't listen to.
Yeah, and a lot of times the image would I'd be like, and I get past that and I'll listen to the lyrics. I'm like, okay, that's a really,
Exactly.
really good song.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very nice. And Miracle, yourself, are you a Cure fan? The Cure?
I listen to a little bit of everything, honestly. I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of Cure, but I'm open to listen to everything. I've listened to Cure before, especially when I'm playing, I won't say her name because she'll come on, when I'm playing A, and she just plays random music, she'll just play a random set. So I like it all, so I'm open.
It would be quite bizarre if that question was about COVID and we've just read it wrong.
Oh no. you're I think okay. now I'm paranoid. But I don't think so, because Anthony Miranda also put exclamation points like yay. So
Cure is awesome.
hopefully we did it. Hopefully we did it. And I know there are a couple of, my dad grew up like with 80s music and all those different things. And so even I love that it like transcends generations as well. Because I know even for myself, I still enjoy, and I'll bring up the playlist and stuff. And I'm excited because my brother will come in, he's 14 and he's like, what's this? And I'm like, education time. And I'll like get to tell him about the bands and songs and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. But again, anyone on Facebook or YouTube, if you have a comment, want to say hi, ask a question, please feel free to do so. We're going to continue with this interactiveness. And my next question would be, what do you see for your future pertaining to writing or otherwise? This could be professional, this could be personal, this could be in the next couple months, in the next few years. What do you see for your future pertaining to those kinds of things, beginning with Mr. Ruiz?
Well, I'm switching. I made a big switch going from MG to YA. I've already been through it for a while. By the time the books come out, I've already been going through this for well over a year and a half. And so the transition to it, I've got beta readers and I've got an editor, so I'm getting a lot of, good, very constructive feedback. And it's about the writing maturing and getting to writing for middle graders, for when your youngest are middle graders versus your youngest. Sorry, headset didn't play very well. Or, getting an older crowd. It's a matter of just making the adjustment and knowing, I can't say this or I can't say that. To now it's like, I can say whatever I want, And so it's just the adjustment and making sure that the writing is right for the audience, and making sure it comes across and matures. And that's what I'm hoping that happens in the next few years, that the writing matures in the sense of audience, and that I'm able to just keep everything distinguished, because I have other genres and I plan on writing on as well. I've got a couple of, drafts written for that. Primarily, it's always going to have supernatural. It's always going to have paranormal or straight up horror. It's going to always have something, no matter what. If I write a love story, it's going to be a love story in hell or something, But but it's always going to be some darkness to it. But I'm hoping that I see the writing maturing and just writing kind of a mix of the older crowd, adult, and shuffling middle grade YA and an adult crowd.
Very nice. And for Mr. Sputnik, what do you see for yourself in the future pertaining to writing or otherwise?
For the immediate future, I would love to get a sequel out to Food for Worms. I've got the title in my head. I've got the book cover in my head. Just haven't got any material for it yet, but I've got the difficult bit out of the way. I found when I was doing Food for Worms, the moment I had the idea for the cover and the title spurred me to finish it, because I could see a finished product in my head. So I'm hoping that will spur me to actually get some material for it. I've probably got now 3 bits of flash fiction and 1 nearly finished longish short story. But that's going to take a bit of time doing. That's what I really want to concentrate on, is getting the second one out for that. I did toy with an idea of writing a novella, maybe even a novel. But the more I think of it, I just think that short stories is my niche. I just enjoy writing short stories. If I get a short story I think I can turn into a novella, then my plans will change. Never say no.
That's right.
So we'll see where it goes from there.
Very nice, very nice. And I wish you the best of luck, either in the short story or the novella. Like I like how you said, never say never, never say no. You never know.
You can't say I'll never write one, because one day I could write a short story. And like you said, Miracle, when you got to 10,000 words and suddenly it was 20,000 words, that can happen.
It can.
Touch wood.
Right.
And Miracle, for yourself, where do you see your future taking you in your writing career or otherwise?
Hopefully continue to become a better writer. Imagination continue to flow. I have a novelette. Well, I've had a novelette just kind of sitting on the back burner for years. Well, it's been a few years. I haven't really done anything with it. So I'm trying to go back to that. And I also have a novel that I'm working on that it's in such the beginning. It's an initial, I guess, formation. I have the cover, though. I always get the cover before I finish. That's about it. So just hoping to find my writing mojo on a steady basis. That's my hope. So that's what I'm focused on.
Very nice. And I do have maybe 2 or 3 more questions, but I'm trying to decide. I think I'll go with a fun one in the next one, which is, okay, I'm excited for this answer.
Oh.
If you could create your ideal zombie survival team, who would be in it? And this could be living, dead, fictional, real, created in your own mind. But if you could create your ideal zombie survival team, who would be on it? Why? Manuel, start us off.
Okay, I thought about this way too much. So, first, it's going to be a mix of real and reality. First would be my wife. She's the one that is terrified of anything and says, if anything like that or whatever happened, I'd be the first one. So just like every story, you need someone at the beginning to fight for. You need somebody somebody to sacrifice. She's sacrificial lamb number 1. She's victim number 1. She dies. We turn left and we escape. But before she leaves, she says something, worth fighting for, like, save the boys or something, which is my son and my nephew. And I'd be like, you got it. You were a good wife. Love you. Peace. And then go. And so the next thing I would be my son and my nephew. When my son was younger and I was playing the video games like a Kingdom Hearts or Call of Duty, he'd be the one behind me that had my back because I'd be focused on my task. And he'd tell me, Dad, look to your left. Oh, look at that. Look behind that. So he'd be the one that would help guide me to, make sure we take everybody out. And my nephew's a fellow gamer, so he'd be on my side. And then I would pull in Pennywise. So we run into any living enemies. Pennywise, go hide in the sewer and take them out. So he's going to take out the human enemies. Then I've got 11 from Stranger Things, because she's 11. And then finally, I take Michonne, because she's the best fighter I know from Walking Dead, and she's got a sword. Who doesn't want a sword? And that would be my ideal zombie team. And I even have a theme song. We would have we'd be playing "Let's Go Crazy" from Prince when we'd be fighting. So let's go. We'd be all into it. And the fighting hype song, though, I don't want to play it because I'm afraid it's going to get a copyright thing. So I was going to play it, but I'm not going to. It would be "Jump" from Van Halen, because those keyboards come on, we're like, yeah, let's go fight, And I told you, I thought about this way too much. So that's the zombie opening scene story.
I love it.
I love it so much. I know Jackie Smith, her immediate response was Alexander Hamilton.
No, he gets shot by somebody with a duel.
No. And she also said, wait, you're sacrificing Daisy.
Yes.
Out of love. And see, we're going to be motivated later to say, we're doing this for Mom. Okay, you got it. Hey, Disney burned Bambi's mom, Mom and Dad, Disney's mean.
And Jackie also
the driving force.
Oh my goodness. And Jackie says, honestly, Manuel, I've been waiting this entire panel to make a Hamilton joke.
He throws away his shot. I can't deal with that. We just somebody that knows.
Oh my goodness.
Hamilton rocks.
I love it. And so, Ian Sputnik, who is your dream team zombie survival little coalition of people? Who do you have?
I didn't pick a team. I just put one person because he's the greatest person in the world. And I don't need a team with him. I need Tom Savini. Because Tom Savini knows everything about. I mean, there's two reasons for this. He knows everything about killing zombies. He's been doing it for a long time.
Yes.
And the second thing, if we get cornered, Tom Savini is a fantastic makeup artist. He can just make us both look like zombies. We walk straight past them, no problem. He ticks all the boxes.
I love it. I love it. Like hiding in plain sight, just like we're gonna finesse the zombie, cruise on over.
Oh, we're in trouble there, passing lipstick.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And Miracle, who is on your dream team zombie survival group?
Okay. Quicksilver, Blade, Morbius, Sub-Zero, Bumblebee, and I would have a group of trained, obedient raptors. Here we go.
I love that so much. That's like one of the smartest things. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, but I'll be sitting next to Tom Savini.
Oh, I may have to come over to your side, Ian.
You're right.
And I'll put Pennywise to kill them all.
This is about survival. We're not pitting against each other. We all got to survive together.
Oh,
Oh, we team up.
A team up. A team up very much so.
That'd be good.
And this one might go in several different directions, but I do have a comment from M. Anthony Miranda coming from Facebook with a question saying there are writers across the country speaking of the 2020 summer social demonstrations and protests and its influence on their writing. Do you have any words, either speaking from watching these demonstrations rallied around, a single cause, social justice, rights, and things like that? Do you have any words on, has that impacted your writing, or has it impacted the way you are perceiving the world at the moment, Manuel?
Yes, and more in the sense of the characters. Our stuff's horror. It's supernatural. It's scary, but it's still the sense of people being oppressed. It's the I have the Dead Club especially. It's a real diverse group of folks, but I want that to be blind. I want it to be like, I don't care what ethnicity they are or where they're from or whether they're male, female. I want to know that they're all together, and it shouldn't matter, because that's the most important thing. And that's the way all my stories are. Like I mentioned, To Kill a Mockingbird. That is one of the books that just infuriates me when I'm reading it, and I read it multiple times, but it's the tenacity of Atticus that just says, I'm going to keep on and do what's right, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm doing this for bartering versus money, or if everybody of 90 people around where I live are awful and doing something so awful. I'm going to do it because I know what's right, and the difference between right and wrong, and that's something that I think permeates through. And so that's, I think, how it relates to it. Even if we think, how do you do that in horror or whatever, it's not about that. It's always about the character, the person. You got to have good, you got to have evil. And sometimes you want to put the most infuriating thing, and you don't always have to be, with a big neon sign, this is what I'm writing about. It can be subtle. It's better when it's subtle, actually, sometimes, because it makes a story, it makes you think. You want to be able to think without being told to think, because most people, you tell them how to think and they just turn off. Boom. Don't tell me to think. Don't preach to me. That's not how that's one of the biggest things in writing. They say, don't preach or talk down to anybody. If you can do it the right way, they're going to see it. It's going to be between the lines. So, and that's how I think it's something we can incorporate in the type of stories we write.
Very nice. And Ian, with yourself, I know it's kind of like a worldwide thing going on with, I know, especially over the summer, but it's always a prevalent and imperative and important topic of just, with the social demonstrations and social justice going on, how has that influenced the way, you've been seeing certain aspects of the world, or maybe even an influence on your writing?
I don't think it's really affected my writing. I think it's always been there, and I think it always will be. The injustice equality thing, if you only got to watch The Walking Dead, there's always some that have, some that don't. Some will want to take away from those who haven't because they've got more power. So I don't think it's ever changed, because I think I've always been aware of it. And I love what Manuel said about you can incorporate it subtly without having to be like a protester, write a protest piece. You can incorporate it into any bit of literature, whether it be horror, anything, because anyone with any sense will see it in there. But I think it's always there. I think, unfortunately, it's always going to be there. it will be incorporated into anyone's work because it's just a part of life. Not a great part of life, unfortunately, but it's there. But I can't top what Manuel said, actually. I should have just said ditto.
Very nice. And Miracle, for yourself?
You know, I have to agree with both Manuel and Ian. Yeah, 100%. And I think in my writings, I like to plant subtle seeds in a lot of my writings, dealing with various social issues and etc. So I totally agree with both of you of what y'all said regarding that question.
Very nice. And we do still have a bit of time. And so I have 2, 3 more questions for you all. But the next one would be, do you have any interesting or close to your heart stories in your career as an author? This could either be, maybe it happened at an event or in the actual writing process or publication process or an interaction with the reader. Are there any close to your heart stories that you've experienced through your authorship, Manuel?
Okay, yeah, this one's good. This one's a little sad, but it was inspiring. You know, we write and we're not thinking about stuff like this. We don't think it's going to have this kind of impact. You're writing the story you want to tell, and you might have a theme you want to use, and there's things you don't think about. And a few years ago, I was at the Texas Book Festival, and my editor was there, and one of her business partners was there, and she turned to me. She goes, "Would you mind if I told you a story?" And I said, "No, I'd love hearing stuff about my books." And I said, "Sure, you can tell me." She says, I have a real good friend, and I'm going to try and make this quick, but I have a real good friend who whose husband got cancer, and he was not expected to live, and he had 2 kids, and had a son who's about 10, 11 years old, and it hit him hard. They went through this time, and they were told he was not going to survive. It wasn't a maybe. He wasn't going to survive. So the kid was taking it hard. I mean, he's about to lose his dad. Mom took care of him, did everything she could to help him, and then he got better. And okay, awesome. So he goes through thinking this loss is coming, gets so excited. And when he comes out of it, he says, I've decided to move on. He leaves his family and just abandons them, basically. And so, yeah, this story doesn't get much better yet. But so the kid's devastated. He's having a hard time. And the partner had just read The Dead Club. Now, The Dead Club is, it's a fun book. It's dark, but it's about death. They're in the afterlife. So she said he was at a point where if you told him to do anything, he was just, I'm going to reject everything. He just sometimes, kids in a bad place and you tell them do this, they're going to do the exact opposite. So she said she showed up to her friend's house and it was her friend's daughter, actually. And she left the book on a coffee table or something. And I'm not getting, and so she left it there. And within a couple of days, the mom said he took it. And then it turns out he just started, coming out of his shell, and he ended up participating in some kind of deal they had with his class, wrote like a report on it, and got a great grade. And it helped him deal with it because it dealt with death. It wasn't a serious thing about death, but it dealt with death. It dealt with happiness. It helped him jump to a world where he could escape what was happening in the reality. He had just gone through so much, and the fact that it dealt with, death, and even though it was light, it helped him that way. I would have never expected that from when I wrote the story, thinking this is one day going to do this. No way I could have known that. But to hear that inspirational story, I'm like, are you kidding me? I was so happy she told me, but it made me, it inspired. That's just one of those things I can take even now. And it's been a couple of years since I heard that story, but it's inspiring to me now when I write that. I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm going to write this just in case that happens, but it's just a matter of, it's just inspired you to continue writing, to know that your work does things sometimes or affects people in ways you would never, ever, ever imagine. And that hit me and it stuck with me. And it's like, wow. So, that's the one story that there's been a few minor ones like that, but that's the one that's carried the most impact for the longest time.
Very nice. Very nice. And I love, how you say you have no idea what's going to come from it. Like, you don't write with that intention. Oh, one day this exact scenario is going to happen and it's going to be like, and it's just, I think that's one of the amazing parts about writing, where when you write the story, you have your own intent in mind. Of what you think you're going to, make a funny story or a sad story or this kind of thing. And you never know what connection you'll make with the readers. And, as readers, some of the most profound connections you make with the characters or with the story you never would have thought would have occurred the second you opened the cover. And so I love that very much.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sputnik, any close to your heart stories about your writing or authorship?
Yeah, we've got a quite nice one, but unfortunately, Manuel's just blown mine out of the water. Thanks for that, mate. It's like being a support group for you too. I'm gonna sink here. It was more to the fact that when you write something, especially only writing short stories, which someone else has published, you don't know how many people are going to read it. You don't know how many people are going to remember it. I got an email a couple of years ago from a voice actor, Kristen Holland, from Australia. Now he's got his own podcast he does voice acting. He basically narrates horror stories on his Nocturnal Transmissions website. He was in a competition, had got through to the semi-final. He needed a piece to read, and he wanted something typically English because he wanted to use his English accents and voices for it. He randomly picked 2 old issues of Sanitarium, just randomly. Mine just happened to be in it, which was about an old couple going around English pubs sampling real ale. This sweet old couple. He did the voices, the male, the female. He got through to the final on that. But what I like about it is, since then, he's done 3 or 4 of mine. I now call him a close friend of mine. On his website, he's got me down as a diamond geezer. Must be an Australian thing. I call him a personal friend now. At Christmas, he always gets in contact to see if I'm okay. We speak regularly. And that's all because someone on literally the other side of the world picked up a little small publication and read a story of mine. And you just don't believe that when you write something, when it goes into a magazine, that someone around the other end of the world is going to pick it up and think, oh, perfect, yeah. So that's my little story, but which sounded so more great before I heard Manuel's.
I love it though. It's like you never, ever, ever can even conceptualize the connections that you're going to make.
And to actually make a close friend now, we are actually friends. We speak, we swap things. Now I've taken over Sanitarium. He helps plug the magazine. He helped plug my book. He gave a little shout out for it. He narrated 2 stories out of the book back to back and did a shout out. I put an advert in Sanitarium for his podcast. It's symbiotic relationship, I think he called it. But I just consider him a friend now, just because he read one of my stories. And I think friends are worth their weight in gold.
I love it. I love it so very much. And so, Miss Miracle Austin, any close to your heart stories, either in your writing career or authorship?
I think I have a few, and this is when I met some authors. A few years back, I attended the Horror Writer Convention in Oregon, and I was in the PALS library. If you've never been, oh my goodness, it's humongous. And I was standing there in the horror section looking at some books, and I happened to turn to my right, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not who I think it is. And so I turned again, and it was the late Jack Ketchum. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go up and meet him. And so when I did finally build up enough courage to go up and meet him, I couldn't say anything. Nothing came out. He just looked at me and smiled. He signed my book, of course. But I couldn't say anything. I wanted to say so much, but nothing came out. So anyhow, that was quite interesting. And then the second thing, R.L. Stine was in Austin a few years ago, and I took a picture with him, and he signed a book too. And what happened? My husband got a new cell phone for me, and some of the pictures didn't transfer over, and that was one of them. So I was heartbroken, lost it. I thought I posted it on Facebook. I'm like, maybe one day when Facebook is doing the throwbacks, I would see it again. No, not so lucky. And then my most favorites, most recently, when I did photo meet and greet ops with Millie Bobby Brown, AKA 11, and also when she was at the Alamo Comic Con in San Antonio, and then the Stranger Con in Dallas, I met Priya Ferguson, aka Erica Sinclair, for Stranger Things. So those were some pretty amazing moments as far as an author for myself. So
I love it. Thank you. And so my final question before we jump into reading some excerpts and getting some spooky frights vibes going on is for aspiring writers or aspiring authors, what words of advice would you have to offer? Either from your own experience and things that you've learned, or maybe, you know, something you wish you had known before you started, or, you know, little gems of wisdom that you've picked up along the way. What are some words of advice and words of wisdom for aspiring writers and authors, Mr. Ruiz?
I touched on this earlier. Write. Don't try to make it perfect the first time you do. Finish your first draft. You cannot fix what does not exist. You have to get that done. Don't worry about it. And it's difficult. It was difficult for me because I always wanted to make things perfect. It took me forever, especially when you're writing. You know, I tried writing short stories when I was younger, but I found out, like you, Katelynn, I have an issue with that. I got to write more. I got to say more. And so the big thing is get it done, get it finished, and read. And when you're done reading, read some more. Read in your genre, read outside your genre, because sometimes you learn about character, sometimes you learn about, you don't even, and you're not sitting there studying or necessarily taking notes. It's just you read so much and you get it. You know, what about this character made me like them or not like them, or what made a good villain? And that also comes out in your writing. But my main thing is write till you can't stop. You can fix it later. Just like in English class, when you did brainstorming, when you did your first draft, nothing changes. You're just dealing with a lot more pages. And so just write, continue to write, and read all you can.
I love that. I love that. And so, Mr. Ian Sputnik, any words of advice for aspiring writers or authors?
Well, one I touched on earlier again, as Manuel did, it's proofreading. Get someone else to read your work. And it's not just for the typos. I found, especially, I'm only doing it from a short story perspective. That's what I know at the moment. I found I'd written a story. I was completely happy with it. It made sense. It was fine. When I passed it over to someone else, they read through it and they said, why did such and such a person do that? And it suddenly hit me because I knew what was going on. I hadn't explained it. But someone who didn't know where my head was at, read it, and it didn't make any sense to them. But it's the same sort of thing as a typo, because I know why the character's doing that. I expect everyone else to know that. Mm-hmm. What's up with them? Can't they read my mind? So that's get someone else to read it. It hasn't got to be a professional. Probably not best to use your mum, because she'll say it's very good. Yeah, very, that's perfect, very good. Give it to someone, a work colleague. Read that, tell me what you think, because you get an honest opinion. The other one, which really does go in the short stories, keep your work together. When I brought out my book, I realised I had pieces of work on my work laptop, I had pieces of work on my home laptop, and pieces of work on my PC. And I also had lots of different versions where I've updated it. Always keep a file, always copy to it. Another good thing for backup, email it to yourself, because then it never goes away. But I was really struggling with Food for Worms, where I knew I'd had stories, some have been published, and I didn't know where the latest version was. And I didn't know whether I was going to put a version in with errors. It was a nightmare. So definitely keep a file, even if you've just got a sub file with drafts in it, final file. These are the ones I like. Keep everything in there. That's it.
I love that. And it's definitely practical advice too. Like I know for myself, like there's always, I'll have like the draft and then second draft and then the final of the final, like just making sure that everything's all together. It's something that we don't think about.
You don't know what to call them, because if you call it final, well, if you improve on it, like you say, is it the final? And then if you put a date at the end of it, we know we saved it. Well, how do you know you haven't made another version? Did you correct it at work and save a copy at work?
Put the date at the end of it. That's what I finally started doing, because it's awful.
The date? You said, what did you say, Manuel? The date?
If I keep the names the same, because I'll have final, just like y'all are saying, I'll put the date at the end of it. And that's the one where I know what's the latest date. Okay.
That's smart.
I just started doing that recently.
Yeah, that's really smart.
I love it. The practical advice aspect as well. And
That's just from personal experience, because I know what a nightmare. I just suddenly thought, well, I think I've got enough. I had all the titles, and I suddenly thought, where are they all? They were all over the place.
Yeah.
So at least keep just one place to put everything in.
Definitely. And Miracle Austin, any advice for aspiring writers or authors?
I do. I have a few things. Definitely agree with everything 100% that both Manuel and Ian have discussed. Definitely just want to piggyback a little bit on Manuel's about reading everything. I think that is vital. Definitely read what you love, your passion. That's very, very important. But it's also good to read different things outside of your genre, even like magazine articles, the newspaper. You'd be shocked where ideas come from. And the reason I'm talking about this, I remember reading something when Stephen King was developing Carrie. He took two different ideas. I want to say he read an article. I could be wrong on this, so don't hold me 100%. I think I was reading something about telekinesis in a magazine, and he took that and then took teenage, awkward girl, bullied, and just mashed them. So that's what's incredible about reading a little bit of everything. You just never know where that, aha, moment's going to come. So that's why it's so important to diversify your mind with different topics. The next thing I would like to talk about is also attend a virtual book festival or author festival, an event like this, because you learn so much. Even if you just take one thing away, you'll be surprised whatever that is. And don't be afraid to ask questions. You do have authors who are very forthcoming. So don't be afraid to ask, because they love to talk. You see, yes, we've been talking for over an hour. The next thing I want to touch on is also take an online creative writing class. They're very affordable. You'll be surprised on how your skills can build just from that as well. Let's see, two more things. Figure out who your true tribe is, because you're definitely going to need a small team or a small circle that's stable, that's going to give you those positive vibes. Because when you're writing, it's hard. It's the solo events, for us. And, when you get these reviews or whatever is going on in your world, you definitely need that stable team that's going to help you and lift you up and build you up. So that's really important. And last thing, most of all, you have to believe in yourself and never, ever let anyone take that away from you or take your magic, and shine.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so very much. That concludes the Q&A part. But I think really quickly before we do final concluding remarks and y'all can get your plugs for your socials and stuff, is some short excerpt readings from some expert excerpts. Say that 5 times fast.
I know.
From your stories. And so maybe a couple minutes, read a little bit, maybe like prologues or an actual short story or like a little bit of the book. But beginning with Mr. Ruiz, you can kick off with some telling us our tales. Get us excited. Get us frightened.
Okay, so I'm going to read from my new book, the one that won't be out till probably next year, but I'm going to give you real quick inspiration. This is a calavera, or a sugar skull. San Antonio has fiesta every year, right? A few years back, I went, bought me a skull. I looked into it, and I think it was this one. I said this one, another one. I looked into it, and bam, a story hit me. I'm going to read the opening, and and here's an exclusive. Here is the cover.
Yes, exclusive.
So,
beautiful, Manuel.
Now the opening, this is an opening scene. It's the first chapter. It's only a couple of pages, but this is actually based on a true story. This is actually something that happened to me. I'm from South Texas, originally from Robstown, which is just outside of Corpus Christi. And my family, about 45 minutes further down in Alice, that's where I would hear all these stories, like you were mentioning, Miracle, from my grandmother, and all this weird stuff that would happen. And we spent all our summers there, and we'd spend a lot of summers there and go there every few weekends. And eventually stuff happened to me, and I was there one time and something happened to me, my cousin, my brother. I was a little older, so this wasn't like I was 5 and it's a fuzzy. No, I was probably 11 or 12. So it's very clear, and there were about 5 of us involved. Anyway, it's loosely based on this. So that's what I'm going to read now. So here we go. This is called Midnight Visitor. Here, kitty, kitty. The sound of a young girl's voice walking by the open window stopped the 2 best friends from talking. The hair on the back of their necks rose. A shadow eclipsed the light from the street lamp that played over part of their bodies as they lay on the bed. The voice grew louder. Kitty! Here, kitty, kitty! The boys froze. Ricky heard Freddie gasp, but he couldn't make a sound. Ricky's little sister Myra whimpered from the opposite side of the room. Ricky opened his mouth and tried to yell, but nothing came out. His neck tightened and his face felt like someone had splashed cold water over it. The sides of his eyes hurt from not wanting to turn his head. Grandma B, Myra finally yelled. That yell is all it took to trigger Ricky's flight instinct. He bolted from the bed, not caring that he smashed Freddie in the stomach as he flew over him. Freddie didn't notice and jumped out right behind him. They darted from the room as the hall lit up when Grandma B turned on the lights. What? She said. Myra rushed out before them and had her arms wrapped around her grandmother. Grandma, little girl, outside, kitty, she screamed. There were tears in her eyes. Grandma B looked right at Ricky and knew something was wrong. Ricky just nodded. Grandma rushed to the living room with the boys and Myra right behind her. They were much braver with an adult between them in the entryway. Grandma opened the door and looked outside. She turned back. I don't see anything. The moment she finished her sentence, the voice returned. Here, kitty. The three jumped back and Grandma stuck her head out the doorway. Hello, B said. What are you doing out here so late? It's after midnight. A little girl's voice answered. I was just looking for my kitty. She ran away from me. Ricky moved forward and craned his head over his grandmother's shoulder, her body still protecting him. The girl was tiny and wearing a green one-piece bathing suit. She was barefoot and had a small towel over her shoulder. Where are your parents? B asked. Oh, they're not home. Are you by yourself? The little girl didn't answer right away. She looked at Ricky, then peered in the doorway around B's other side. She stared at Mary and Freddie. Who's that? She asked. Ricky turned around. His mother, Lori, was standing there in a t-shirt. What's going on? She mumbled. Don't worry about it, Grandma B said. Go back to sleep. The little girl looked back at the grandmother. She's pretty. Where do you live? She pointed to her right. Back there a few streets down in the corner. Is anybody at your house? And were you swimming? The little girl just smiled. I have to go and find Kitty. Wait, Grandma B said. The little girl turned around and walked down the driveway by Grandma B's parked truck. Ricky, go make sure she's okay. Hurry. The conversation had calmed Ricky down and he ran out on his socks to the end of the driveway. The little girl turned left as soon as she got past the vehicle, just before he reached her. When he looked in her direction, she was gone. He looked around the truck in case she had ducked on the other side, but nothing. He shook his head and turned back to his grandmother. She's gone, he yelled. Grandma B forgot about her bare feet and went running towards him. She looked down the block. It's not possible, she said. The next 7 houses have connected fences. She'd have to go halfway down the block before she could turn back towards her street. She couldn't have run that fast. They all slept on Grandma B's floor that night.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it so very much. And thank you as well, just like the exclusive content. Like,
I've been dying for somebody to hear it. So
Yes. Thank you, Manuel. I look forward to reading.
I'm excited. I'm incredibly excited. Thank you. And in Sputnik, if you'd like to read an excerpt, stories, short stories, anything, the floor is yours.
I've got a very, very small piece for a book. It's a piece of flash, only a page long. I didn't know how much time we were going to have, so I didn't know which one to pick. So I'll give it a go anyway. It's called Reflections. As I look into the mirror, I found it hard to believe it was my own reflection. When did I get so old? I traced every line on my face back to its cause. The ones around my eyes due to the squinting from reading in bad light with failing eyesight. The receding hairline when it used to stand in room only on my head. My lips, once full, now tight, cracked and pale. My face, well formed with chiselled chin, now thin with sunken cheeks. Time just passed by so quickly. The doctor removed the mirror and checked it for signs of misted glass. He looked towards my family, who stood around my bed, and shook his head solemnly. As they put me in the coffin and nailed the lid shut, I wondered how long it would be before my face started to putrefy. And not to such a degree, but I would not be able to recognise myself at all.
Oh my goodness. I was, as you were reading, I was just thinking like the imagery, the detail, the description, like you can see it. It's so beautiful. And then you hit with the, just kidding. This was not going the direction you thought at all. And I love it. I love it very much. And there is still a little bit of time. I don't know if you would like to read another or if you'd like to leave us just, with that.
I'll leave you with that. So my throat's getting really dry.
So for anyone watching, and I know for myself, that was just a taste. You got to get the book to see the rest, and you got to go continue.
Yeah, always leave them wanting more.
Very much so. And so, Miss Miracle Austin, the floor is yours to read excerpts, short stories, anything you'd like.
I'm just going to read a little ditty, and it's from Boundless, and it's titled Infinity. Okay? It's real short, not even a page. Okay? Full moon last night, so was I. I stared in the smeared mirror with broken edges. I wiped it with my wet sleeve. The bathroom's dim sapphire light flickered off and on as flies swarmed above me. I could feel my arms touching both sides of the filthy walls. Small droplets of sewage oozed out of the broken faucets. No fresh water there, or in the dark stained toilets. My shirt and pants were both saturated from earlier. I peeled them off and buried them deep into the overflowing trash behind me. I wiped down my wet footprints with the coarse paper towels. My claws finally retracted, as well as my blood-stained fangs. I opened up the window with one glance. As my arms rested close by my side, I flew back into the maroon sky. I soared effortlessly with my glistening black wings spread wide open and eagle eyes on my next prize.
I love that. That was beautiful. That definitely, all of the stories, all of the excerpts, all of the content just definitely bites of Fright to read all night 100%. And that's a perfect segue into our conclusion of for anyone watching, and I know for myself as well, where can we find these stories? Where can we find more of yourselves? Social media, websites, all of that fun stuff. But before we jump into the overall conclusion, I would just like to say thank you so very much to all of you for taking the time to come today, answer the questions, share your insights, your stories, your excerpts. It means so much. And I'm very, very grateful that you all, accepted the invitation to come on. And for everyone on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for watching. Thank you for dropping your comments. And again, these are all going to be available on Facebook and YouTube after the fact. Author Rentería.com/therightcrowd, and you'll be able to rewatch, share with family and friends, go back, learn some more, take that writing advice and listen to it. I know I'm definitely going to be rewatching these final moments to hear those readings again because they were so very good. And so thank you again for coming and taking the time, and we can begin our sign off with Mr. Manuel Ruiz. Where can we find you after this?
Okay, first I want to say thank you, Katelynn. You've done this, and it's been a great thing for us. A lot of us, we've gone 6, 7, 8 months now without any meetups or doing any kind of author events or visiting classrooms or book events. So having something like this is it's a really cool thing. And I know it resonated with a lot of authors. So really appreciate the hard work of organizing this and everything. You've done an awesome job. So thank you. All my books are on Amazon. My Bed Club series and Lobo. And you can also get them. They can go through libraries, through Ingram Spark. And my website is manuelruiz3.com because I'm the third. A lot of people ask me, why is it 3? Because if you see on my books, I actually have a little 3 as a superscript on there. But I'm the third, Manuel Ruiz third. So I'm also on. I'm not as active on online, but I do have on Twitter. I'm Ruizman, Ruizman. And I do have a Facebook page, which I need to kind of get a little more in gear on. But primarily it's the website and Ruizman on Twitter. And thank you so much for everything. I appreciate it. And again, hope everybody have fun reading.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Mr. Ian Sputnik, where can we find you after this?
You can find me on my website. It's iansputnik.com. But that does need updating. I've been very lax on that. The other way around, I'm usually on Facebook. You'll find me on Facebook under Ian Sputnik, or on Twitter, exactly the same, Ian Sputnik. The book you'll find on Amazon. But definitely, I think Facebook for me is the main. If you want to catch up with me, Facebook is my main. I think it's the hub where all of the writing circle I know go through. So rather than using Twitter, my website, I do prefer to go through Facebook.
Very nice, very nice. And Ms. Miracle Austin, where can we find you after this?
Definitely Amazon. All my books are available on Amazon. As far as Facebook, Miracle Austin author. Twitter and Instagram, Miracle Austin 7. And also, as far as like getting a book autographed, I do mail books physically. So if anyone has any interest that way, and I give a better deal than Amazon as well. So just FYI on that. And it's been a pleasure and an honor, Katelynn, to be part of your incredible virtual author panels. And also not only as a participant, but also as a watcher as well. And I just want to extend the thank you we all do, as Manuel has said earlier, and also Ian, that we are very, very grateful for your time and all the energy and work that you put into this, because it's not easy coming up with all the questions for all the different themes and genres that you are interacting with every weekend, and also juggling your intense grad school schedule and also personal life. So we thank you tremendously. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And just my hats off to all of you all as well. Like we're all hanging in there, and we're all, day by day. But if we could just have, again, I'm just grateful that I could serve in the capacity that, if we could have an hour and 40 minutes to talk and promote and have these conversations and say hello, then this is just as much, for myself, being able to see you all and talk to you all and promote and engage and celebrate. And so I thank you all so very much for taking the time, and I thank you for everything that you've contributed with all your personalities, with your excerpts, with your answers. It's been so wonderful. And I do have some final comments. Yes, I do have some final comments saying goodbye. Troy Morgan, I hope I pronounced that properly, on Facebook says thank you.
Yes, Troy.
Thank you, Troy.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, for pronunciation, Marcia Joseph says thank you for sharing. Thank you for watching. And M. Anthony Miranda again says Harlingen in the house. I'm here. I'm representing. We got the pride. So thank you all again very much for joining. And this is not the end of the right crowd. We have 2 more panels coming up tomorrow at 2:00 and 4:00. And then the final weekend will be next weekend, October 24th and October 25th. Thank you for watching. And once again, to all of our wonderful authors, thank you for joining and spending time here today. And I hope to see you all very soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Good night.